public health order also goes over face coverings, which is masks. And it says that face coverings must be worn by all staff, students, and visitors at all times. Now, there is a part of the public health order that says that alternative protective strategies may be adopted to accommodate students who are on IEPs and who cannot use or tolerate cloth face coverings. So the Department of Public Health has gone kind of back and forth over what those alternative protective strategies can be. But we were able to get definitive guidance, which essentially says that a face shield with a drape, so not just a face shield, it's also got to have a drape. If you look at this picture of me modeling one, you can see the drape that kind of ties behind my neck. Some of them will tuck into a shirt. Can be used as a substitute for a mask. And so that's an accommodation that we've provided. But essentially, there has to be some kind of face covering for all students throughout the day. Now, some students who have difficulty tolerating face masks or face shields were able to accommodate like short mask breaks where they would be far away from other people to limit the potential risk for anything. But that's kind of the most that we can do as far as accommodations go. If your child is not able to tolerate one, and you think that there might be some other accommodation that we might be able to do, please contact your child's case manager so that we can have an IEP meeting and talk about whether or not we'd be able to do that. But essentially, this is all in compliance with the public health order, and it's not one of those things that the district has an option to address. Okay. So in preparation for this meeting, I sent a survey out to our staff and said, tell me a little bit about how things are going with distance learning, and tell me a little bit about some of the positives, and tell me about some of the challenges that you've encountered. And the staff have reported that what they've really liked about distance learning is that they're able to collaborate more with you, the parents, being able to have kind of conversations before or after lessons. They're able to have a lot more interaction with you and gain your input on a lot of different things. They've also been able to develop relationships with students through more frequent informal conversations, which I think is really great. The format kind of lends itself to a more informal type of environment. Sometimes kids will give some of our staff members kind of tours of their house or show them the new trampoline. And so I think it's really cool that they're able to see the kids in kind of a different perspective. The kids are able to see some of the staff members because they're at home and through a different lens as well. A lot of times when we were in school, when we would think of our teachers, we just kind of thought of them living at the school and never thought of them in a home. And so it's been nice for kids to kind of see the teachers and the teachers to see the kids on kind of a equal, more informal level. They've been able to work with students where students are comfortable in their own homes and allow students to feel less social pressure. What's been interesting is that we've had some kids who have really been doing better in the distance learning environment than they were in the regular environment because they don't have some of those social pressures. They don't feel as on the spot. They're able to type in questions or comments in the chat, which makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. They're able to go into breakout rooms, those kinds of things, and they just feel more comfortable. So that's not every student, but we have had a lot of students who have really benefited from this format. They were also able to, teachers have reported that they've been able to see many students who are reluctant participants in person, and they've been opening up more at home. So some of the kids are very quiet while they're in class, and they've kind of come out of their shells a little bit during distance learning. As far as the recommendations for parents who are having some challenges as far as getting their kids to be able to access some different things or maybe struggling with distance learning, the staff have recommended that parents encourage the students to attend office hours and to email their teachers. That's one of the most frequent things that I hear from teachers is that a student hasn't been coming to the office hours to ask any additional questions. Office hours are really great in that it gives the student some very personal time with the teacher, and they can ask very specific questions and really have some one-on-one there. Staff have also recommended that parents notify teachers quickly when technology issues occur. Sometimes you lose connectivity. I know that in my house, Burbank lost Spectrum for like the entire day. So let the teachers know when situations like that have been happening. Have a dedicated box or a bin for materials next to where the child sits. One of the things that a lot of our staff members have reported is that a lot of kids don't have all of their learning materials right with them. You know, in the brick and mortar environment, they've got their backpack, which has all their stuff in it. At home, their stuff is kind of scattered around the house. And so if there's a dedicated place for them to put their stuff right next to where they're doing their distance learning, then that helps with transitions, that helps with a lot of different things. They also wanted to make sure that I tell parents not to be too hard on themselves. We're all struggling, and that our team is here to support you together. They said model acceptance, humor, and love. This is a challenging time for everybody. We're all in the same boat, and we're here to be able to support each other. I also included a few helpful tips as far as some challenges that you might be experiencing with distance learning. I know that there's a few things that my son's in college now, but he's also doing distance learning that so he's having a few challenges with that. The first of which is waking up for early classes. You know, when we're in brick and mortar, a lot of times you're waking up your child, you're rushing them out the door into the car because you got to get to school on time. That's also some time for the kid to wake up and kind of get their wits about them a little bit more. It's a little bit different in the distance learning environment where all they kind of need to do is roll over and turn on their computer. And so waking up on time, I think, is something that is a challenge for a lot of parents. So establishing a sleep schedule, a lot of times if you don't have to go someplace the next day, there's this tendency to want to stay up late and do other things, especially kids on their phones and everything. So establish a sleep schedule with a set going to sleep time. And then as far as alarm clocks go, we all use alarm clocks. We've all kind of got our own systems. Personally, I found it to be helpful if I take the alarm clock and I put it on the other side of the room so that I have to get up to turn it off. For very sound sleepers, my son is a very sound sleeper. The alarm, for some reason, no matter how loud we purchase an alarm to be, it does not wake him up. So we actually found an alarm clock on Amazon that has a little disc that's got a cord that's connected to the alarm clock. That disc goes underneath his mattress and it shakes his entire bed when the alarm goes off, and that wakes him up. Kind of funny to see also somebody like waking up to an entirely vibrating bed. But that can really help if your child is a very sound sleep. Tracking assignments, I think, is sometimes difficult, especially within the distance learning environment. I really, really recommend Google Calendar for a few different reasons. One, it's a good way to get used to technology. Our kids have access to Google, but also they're able to share their calendar with you so that you can make sure that they're keeping track of their assignments and due dates and all of that on Google Calendar. They can also share it with their case manager, so their case manager can make sure that they're doing that. And if they choose to share it with their teacher can see whether or not they're writing down everything that they need to write down. Because a lot of our kids have difficulty with something is due and they didn't do it because they didn't write it down. They just forgot about it. You know, when we're kids, we all think that we can commit something to memory. And a lot of our kids who have disabilities have memory deficits. And so they really can't rely on their memory. So using the sharing feature of the Google Calendar can be really, really helpful in tracking that stuff. Time management. If you attended my executive functioning workshop a couple of weeks ago, you saw me really focus on this. Time management is a skill that we really need to teach, especially for our kids who have disabilities. I have a sample time management form here for multi-step kind of projects. There's a link here. We'll be posting the PowerPoint later on, but you can also access it from the LCUSD website in the special education section. There's a section for parent resources. All the way down to, at the bottom is a link to this form. And what it does is it breaks things down into the various steps. It asks the student to write down what it is that they need to do, what materials they need to have in order to do it, because that's something that comes up a lot, is that you're all ready to get something going and the student doesn't have everything that they need to be able to accomplish the task. The next column over there, the fourth column, is how long do I think that it'll take me to be able to accomplish this task? And then the date and time that I'm going to do it. And the last part, and I think that this is really the key part, is the reflection. That's the last column all the way in the right. where the student has to write down how long it actually took them. And that's what I mean when I say that we need to teach the student time management skills. It's not just knowing when something is due, it's also being able to learn how long it takes to do things. A lot of our kids, with ADHD, for example, neurologically, research has found that they have a really tough time gauging time. Like they don't know what 5 minutes feels like, they don't know what 10 minutes feels like. And so they're constantly either underestimating or overestimating how much time it takes them to do something. And so having that reflection piece where they're saying, oh, I thought it was going to take me 10 minutes, but it actually took me 20 minutes, helps to teach them how to plan for similar tasks in the future. So again, everything is really a teaching process. Another thing that you might be facing with some of your kids is their ability to sustain attention during distance learning. I know that being on Zoom all day is pretty tough, especially if you have a child who has some attention difficulties to begin with. So eliminating a lot of distractions is really helpful, providing a distraction-free environment if possible. I know that a lot of you may have multiple children in your household, and they're all doing distance learning in kind of a small environment, but if possible, having a distraction free environment. Also, please make sure that your child sits in a chair. We have a lot of kids who are doing distance learning lying down in their bed, that's very easy to fall asleep if you're already lying down, and it's very easy to get distracted. And so please make sure that your child is sitting in a chair. Let your teacher know if you think that your child needs periodic movement breaks, or whether or not you feel as though the teacher should really insist on your child being on camera to make sure that the child's paying attention. Also encourage your child to self-monitor how frequently their mind starts to wander. Um, as age and disability appropriate, when they're doing independent tasks, encourage active learning practices like taking notes, highlighting, those things to keep your mind on task. I think that we've all been in that situation when we were in school where you start reading a chapter and before you know it, you finish the chapter, but you have absolutely no idea what it was that you read because you were thinking about something else in your mind, like who saved Grogu from the Jedi um, Council when that whole thing happened. That can totally distract you. You're done with the chapter. You think that you're done. You say that you're done, but you can't actually remember anything that you were going over. So those active learning practices are really, really important. Another thing is staying motivated, and this kind of goes along with what I was saying about notifying your teacher if your child isn't being very attentive. It can be very difficult for teachers to be able to monitor who's engaged, who's motivated, who's being attentive while they're teaching a distance learning lesson. Because sometimes, like right now, I'm looking straight at the PowerPoint. I can't see any of the cameras or anything on my screen right now. And so the teacher may not be aware that your child may be a little bit disengaged. If you give the teacher that feedback, then they can start engaging in practices to be able to re-engage the child, like asking them questions or checking in with them on the chat, those kinds of things. So that parent-teacher communication is really, really important. If possible, having something fun the child can do immediately following the class sessions using a first this, then this model can be really helpful. Having some kind of reward or something for them to look forward to afterwards. You know, distance learning is exhausting both for the staff and for the kids. And so it's really nice to have something that the child can do that they'll really enjoy after a long day of distance learning. Um, and finally, relating class topics to areas of the child's interest can always be very, very helpful. Overall, communication is really key when you're coming to any challenges or anything during distance learning. Please contact your child's case manager if you're concerned. If your child receives special education instruction, so they're in an RSP or a special education class, then your child's special education teacher is usually the case manager. If your child only receives speech and language services, then the speech and language pathologist is typically the case manager. It's the person who contacts you when there's an IEP meeting that's happening. But that communication is really, really important. We want to get on things pretty quickly to try to resolve any problems before they start to get any larger. So a big question that you're probably wondering is what's next? It all really depends on our ability to reduce the spread of the virus. As LA County Department of Public Health starts to see that the numbers are going down, then their intention is to start to loosen some of the restrictions to the degree that they can. Like I said, California Department of Public Health tells them what it is that they can and can't do. Right now, in a surge, they've had to tighten some of the restrictions. Wendy and I are on a call that involves Dr. Ferrer every week, so we're constantly getting updated information. But they intend to loosen the cohort restrictions once the community spread decreases. They were talking a lot about this before the surge started to go up in November. They're planning on increasing the number of people who could be in a cohort, giving us a little more flexibility as far as being able to open different things. But then with the surge, they had to kind of backpedal on that a little bit, and they're hoping that they'll be able to give us that flexibility sometime soon. There is a limited amount that they are able to do. I know that a lot of you may have children who are at the secondary level, and you're wondering when we might be able to open up a lot of things at the secondary level. Within the purple tier, the secondary level is not able to open. And unfortunately, right now we're in the deep purple tier. Once we're able to get to the red tier, then there's more opportunities as far as opening secondary goes. LADPH is also coming up with some potential ways that things might be able to open within a cohort model a little bit. And so we're hoping that they'll give us more guidance on that as time goes on and as the surge begins to dissipate. We're also planning on opening in-person instruction for all third grade students sometime soon. So we have to take a look at those numbers as well. But that's something that we're hoping to do sometime shortly. And with that, that covers the PowerPoint. I know that there's been a few questions in the Q&A. Let's see, let me stop sharing my screen so that I can see everybody. Jamie, were there any questions in particular that you saw coming up?
Yeah, just a couple, and Wendy helped answer them, but just to catch you up, one question was about if there's an opportunity once the staff have been vaccinated, can children who are unable to wear face masks or face coverings be able to come back to in-person services? So she answered that one, just letting us know that we still have to follow the protocols even after vaccines are administered, but anytime we're able to adjust them, we will be able to notify people and let them know. And the second one was about, are there opportunities to bring back special education students other than special day class students back to the high school? And again, she answered that one as well. So that note's there for you. There was a second part about for kids not getting services in person and they've regressed, what are our plans to determine compensatory services?
So as far as compensatory services, that'll have to be determined by the IEP team. Once we're in kind of a more stable situation, and we know what we're able to provide in person and all of that, then IEP teams will need to meet to determine whether the student has not made progress towards their goals and hasn't received educational benefit. And if so, what compensatory services might be necessary and how much. So that's a case-by-case basis, depending on the student's progress.
Thank you. The next question is about how special ed might incorporate the successful office hours with a gen ed teacher once school is reopened. And I know that this topic has been coming up as a definite positive of the, when we examine what has been working in distance learning. So I know we're interested at the high school level looking at schedule, but I didn't know if special ed had a take on that. I think for right now, it's something that is definitely noted as a positive, and we're interested in looking for ways to incorporate this.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that it's very valuable, and we need to look at different ways to kind of expand what's being
and one of the things that the board has had a strong interest in, and it's even one of a part of my goal related to reopening, is that we are actively identifying best practices through the challenges of COVID. And there is an interest where, this distance learning, distance instruction environment has proved or provided us with something that's actually really working well for kids, to determine ways not to let go of it when we return to in-person instruction or instruction as we knew it. So, it's great to hear that the office hours are working. I think they're working for special needs students as well as general ed students. I think that it's a great time for, sort of small group interaction. And it also, helps with some of just, if you're able to do it, via Zoom or for Google Meets, it helps with people's schedules and the demands on schedules. So definitely something we've been looking towards trying to reinvent when we go back to in-person instruction.
Thank you. The next question reads, these executive function tips still require parents to be fully involved on a daily basis. Is there a way to get help from the RSP or case manager to kind of monitor or provide tips instead of the parents?
Yeah, I think that within the environment that we have right now with distance learning, I think that it's really a teamwork type of approach. If you can let the case manager or the teacher that your child's working with know what the concerns are, then we can kind of tag team it a little bit. One of the challenges, of course, is that the teacher can't actually get hands-on involved with the student within distance learning, and so they kind of require you to be their hands and kind of the follow-up on some of that. But definitely talk to the case manager if there are concerns going on. They can provide different tips and behavioral strategies. They can do their best to be able to hold the student accountable for whatever it is that they're having challenges with, especially planning and those kinds of things. They can be checking in with the students. But it is a teamwork approach where we do have to work with you to be able to have some of the follow-up at home, because we don't have them right in front of us.
And one of the things I think it would be remiss not to recognize right now is just how powerful the partnership with our parents is, especially with, the instructional delivery with our special needs students. So thank you to all of our parents who have, taken on these roles, but you shouldn't have to shoulder it yourself. So, per Dr. Ihori's point, please reach out to, your case manager, to the individual teachers, explain sort of, what you're dealing with, and brainstorm together ways that support can be provided, so that we know that it takes its toll on parents when instruction is being delivered in the home, and you're figuring out the ways to provide the supports and accommodations. So please let us know so that we can be an equal partner in this.
And I know that it sounds cliche, but it really does take a village, especially in this situation, and working together is the way that we'll be able to really help our students.
Thank you. The next question is there, if there can be in-person instruction this summer, is the district considering a plan to work with the special education students who have regressed academically during distance learning?
So every summer we have what's called extended school year, and that's for students who have needs that are so significant that they're likely to regress really significantly during the summer break and not be able to recoup those skills within a reasonable period of time once returning in the fall. That is something that will still be available. It's something for the IEP teams to determine whether the student meets that criteria. If they've regressed academically thus far, then that's something that the IEP team really needs to consider and see what services they may require during the summer. We don't know whether it'll be in person or whether it'll be in distance. That's something that we'll have to find out from public health what's allowed, and see what it is that we're able to do based off of the numbers.
And I think to Derek's point also that it'll take, the full IEP team to really look at, where are the learning gaps, and, what is the situation. We've seen, both general ed and special education students, some of them be extremely successful with distance instruction. Other kids it's harder for, both our kids with IEPs and our general ed students. So we're going to be assessing, in its entirety, the experience over this length of distance learning, and trying to be very, very creative and responsive to meeting needs, to address any of those learning gaps or any, potentialities that we recognize going forward. So again, really a plug or a pitch for good, consistent communication from that home to school partnership, so that we're on top of these things and we can, take a look at them, hopefully as early as potentially summer. Just need to get through the crisis and sort of reestablish the new normal.
The next question, I can actually take this one, and it is, how many special education students have utilized paper? And so just to make sure everybody in the audience knows, we have a tutoring service that's available for students 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they can log in going through ClassLink. It's called paper.co, and they have access to tutors in a variety of subjects. And the question is just how many special ed students have accessed it. I actually made this as a feature request to the company. We don't have a way to track this data because it's not breaking it down by student with any kind of demographic or any other data markers. So we just have data on how many students are accessing it, but I did let them know this would be a really nice upgrade if we could my suggestion was to be able to create student groups so we could see, we could track progress of a cohort that was, recommended to use the system and see if it was working for them. But as of right now, we just have all total students that are using it. So thank you for your question. The next question is, how about no proper goals were setting now by the teacher? How do you judge the progress by IEP team when it is normal?
I don't know if I fully understand the question. The goals are developed at the IEP meeting. Usually the staff will come in with some drafts that they review with the parents to get your input on it as well. The goals all have baseline data that the annual goal is based on. So we've got the baseline data where the student is performing right now on that particular skill, and then we have an annual goal of where we want the student to be performing in that exact skill area a year from now. If their skills are already within the average range and they're already independently able to demonstrate a skill, then they don't actually need a goal in that area. So goals are based off of the present levels of performance and the deficits that have been identified in those present levels of performance. So you should only have goals in the areas where there have been identified deficits. Hopefully that answers your question.
And
yeah, please.
No, just to comment. I mean, I think we're all facing the reality that plans or goals that were, set or, determined before COVID or when we first entered and we thought we were, closing our school facilities for a few weeks or a month, it's a rapidly changing environment. So if if you feel like goals that were set when we were in a different environment, are somehow, not appropriate, then, to Derek's point, they were created based on present levels of performance and deficit areas. But as a member of the IEP team, please, voice your concerns and, goals can be written for the upcoming year that maybe the team agrees better align or respond to different deficits that have arisen over the current learning environment.
Yeah, a follow-up comment came in that the writer says the teacher claims they cannot set them online. So I think that really goes back to your comment, Wendy, that, set a meeting with the teacher, with the IEP team and
that is an area of challenge that our staff are really struggling with. So for example, if your child had a social skills goal, so let's say that their goal was to interact with 3 kids and have 4 verbal exchanges while on the playground environment. That's not something that we're able to measure while we're in the distance learning environment. And so that isn't something that we would be able to get data on. And so what we're doing at this point is we're trying to get data as much as we can on a similar type of skill. So we're doing the best that we can given kind of the restriction that we have. It's not a perfect answer, but it's the best that we can do.
The next question reads, the special education workers and case managers are so busy that it seems not all the needs are being met. Is the district considering hiring more? These case workers work over the weekends.
So we're constantly looking at our case numbers and how much is being placed on our staff members. And we've been trying to be very sensitive about that and trying to be flexible with how we provide trainings. For example, we always want to continue professional development. But we haven't been able to pull people out for like sub days and those kinds of things because they're so busy with other stuff. So we've been doing video trainings and those kinds of things so that we can still address those needs without interrupting their day too much. So we're doing kind of bite-sized trainings for them, things like that. We have added a little bit more staff. We contracted with another speech pathologist, for example, because we had so many students who receive speech and language services. And while we are targeting our special day class students for speech and language services, being able to do both distance learning stuff and in-person stuff was very challenging. And so we've increased staff for our speech caseload as well. We have a staff member who's been helping out with assessments. So it's something that we're constantly monitoring.
Thank you. Another question is, could you use outside resources now for the area SD stuff has difficulty now?
Well, the goals were developed. This is the same person who was asking the goal question before. The goals were developed within the school environment. So again, with the example of the social goal that I was talking about, where if it's within an unstructured environment, in person, maintaining proper eye contact, those kinds of things, we want to measure how the student is doing it in the school environment. And so the goals are very specific. If you look at your children's goals, it's very specific with the setting, the percentage of accuracy, the number of trials, all of that. And so we want to make sure that we're measuring it as close to that way as possible. It sounds like you have kind of a specific situation that you're working with right now. So I would definitely reach out to your case manager to get more targeted answers for the challenges that you're facing.
The other thing is, I know how busy our teachers are and the case managers are. So, make sure to utilize, as many of your resources as possible. Oftentimes if you're not able to get a response, reach out to your site principal or the member of the IEP team who directly provides the service or would, be able to pull the data to measure present level of performance or progress on goals. I think it is a real opportunity or need for the entire team to work together. So, I sense the frustration in your questions, and I'm empathetic to that. So, please make sure that if you're concerned about a goal or its appropriateness or being able to measure, communicate that, and then at the appropriate time, we can either provide support or we can be looking at alternative strategies to better address student need.
All right, I think that covers all of our questions, right? All right. Well, thank you everyone again for taking the time out of your evening. I hope that you all have a great rest of your night. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
And we talked about checking in with families. And so this meeting was a little bit delayed just because of the overall demands of COVID and trying to get as much reopening done. And we have been successful with that. But Derek and I are planning to hold a few of these between now and the end of the school year. I'm also going to be working on getting some Zoom coffees set up with all families. So, obviously that would be an avenue for our special education families as well. But please reach out. We're here for you. We're very, very caring about your students' progress and your experience in distance learning. So thank you for taking the time tonight. And we look forward to the ongoing partnership and making gains and improvements wherever we can as we move forward. So have a good evening, and thank you to the team for being here. And we're very grateful to all of our parents and attendees. So appreciate it. Have a good night.